Entheogens and Sexuality. I would like to start this talk. I will explain a little bit of the history, or my history, my personal account on the healing aspects of entheogens and sexuality and spirituality. And would also love to invite people after going through this account and see what their experiences are with entheogens and sexuality, and have it be a co-creative event right now. I will describe some of the medicines, some of the entheogens that I've used, and the effects that have, I wouldn't want to say on women, because it's just my experience, although I've shared with other women also, and in terms of how we react with entheogens and how we open up to sexuality. But I would like to hear, and as I say, we don't need to wait for the question and answers. If you have something to say, whether it's a personal experience or a comment on my talk, feel free to say so. So I'm going to start by briefly describing my experience with ayahuasca. The first few sessions that I took ayahuasca, I was very aware of a split that I had between sexuality and spirituality. Ayahuasca has helped me heal this split, and I want to share a little bit of what my experiences have been. So, the split between sexuality and spirituality, in particular, I'm going to talk about how I felt most of my life, having a Judeo-Christian upbringing, and also shamanic, but mostly Judeo-Christian. There was a lot of cellular guilt and shame that I was carrying. I was very aware of my sexuality since the age of 4 or 5 years old. Always obsessed with ideas about shame and guilt, and that kids shouldn't have a sexuality, or they were dirty if they acted, or they just touched, or they were just plain aware of their sexuality. I remember feeling like this when I was little, and a lot of the times it was nature that dissipated these ideas or these feelings. It gave me a momentarily feeling of being comforted and liberated from these negative and intrusive thoughts. I spent the rest of my childhood and went to Catholic school. My soul felt imprisoned. I learned all about original sin, which happens simply by being born into this life and needs to be forgiven by God. We reach salvation once we die after a life lived by God's laws, mostly out of fear, and not reaching heaven and ending in hell. This seeking forgiveness for something we don't understand or have not done in our life never made sense to me. It seemed like no matter how I conducted my life, there was always something intrinsically wrong with me, and I would never achieve freedom in this life. That was the Judeo-Christian legacy I inherited. There's a collective image that is responsible for this deeply ingrained feelings of guilt and shame, and that contribute to the sexual conflict in Christian society. First, this author, he mentioned that a body and sex positive spiritual trend is emerging, and it might help breach and heal the breach between man and woman, body and mind, flesh and spirit. At that time, I had no contact with such a trend, and I suffered in silence. I remember talking to my mother and confessing about my sexual explorations. I asked her if she still loved me despite of my bad behavior and my loss of purity and innocence. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and hugged me, and she said she loved me so much that nothing that I could do could be bad. And it was normal for young people to explore their sexuality. She assured me that one day when I grew up, I would enjoy my sexuality very much. In that moment, I felt a relief for having shared a secret that was tormenting my soul for so long. Later on middle school, I forgot about sexuality and spirituality and my inherent connection to nature as I got distracted with studies, friends, and other activities. Those memories of guilt and sin seemed to disappear. They didn't have the emotional heaviness they had once. During my adolescent years, sexuality and spirituality took center stage again in my life. As I became closer to my father's family, who were from the jungle and practiced shamanism. As I involved myself in indigenous practices, I felt an increased affinity to them, and I participated and connected directly to nature and something bigger than myself by releasing this dogma that I was raised with. It felt very different than sitting in church listening to the priest preach. The influence of Catholicism continued to decrease, but it was really hard to integrate these two polarities. The church, represented by a Judeo-Christian view, holds God as something outside of ourselves, distant, somewhere in the skies or the heaven. Nature, represented by the Shamanic Cosmovision, holds that we are the same essence as God, as well as creatures and natures. We're all interconnected and interrelated. So I'm going to move until, let's say, teenager years. I grew up in the country. I'm from Peru, and machismo and patriarchy are very prominent. There is a double standard for sexuality in men and women, and spirituality as well. Throughout my teenager years, I also experienced a little split. It's almost like I had to choose between sexuality and spirituality. It was like sex was divorced from spirit. And it was until I had ayahuasca. Ayahuasca helped me heal this split. Helped me look at my emotions, my body, as I drank the brew several times in the jungle, and just peeling layer and layer of that conditioning that I spoke before. And something magical happened. After all that grief, after all that deconditioning, after hours and hours of misery and vomiting and just feeling like I was gonna die, something in my body just woke up, and it was an amazing energy, an amazing erotic energy that was so alive, that made me connect with nature, made me connect with women, made me connect with something inside myself that could inform that my sexuality was okay, that my sexuality was not divorced from spirit. And that was the first time that I could feel really liberated, that no matter what I did with my sexuality, as long as it felt good in my body, in my emotions, and it was everything connected, there was nothing wrong with that. And it was spiritual. The act of sex is the act of the spirit in the flesh. I've tried other medicines, since relating and relationships and sexuality have been the themes in my life. And I've observed also heart openers in combination with ayahuasca or with other plants from Africa that are core plants, plant teachers like ayahuasca. Give you a sense in your body, like your body is awake and you really have to listen to anything relating to spirit and sex. There is a medicine that I've been doing a diet for a year. This medicine is one that really gives you mental clarity, gives you a sense of yourself, of your own power. It's almost like a belly wisdom. And has been also informing a lot of the trajectory of my work, my personal work, and my work with people. How to hold sexuality, how to hold relating or relationships, and what has it given me is the opportunity to be a witness to a lot of my core issues. And when you're relating or you're in a relationship, a lot of the times we pick people that want to, or that we want to complete, or we want them to complete aspects of ourselves, right? Or that we want to project, because sometimes it's very ugly to look at ourselves. So there's somebody there that we can just project and blame all the things in life that maybe we have not resolved. This particular plant really gets you inward for about 2 or 3 hours and really gets you to look at your stuff, whether you want to look at her or not. It does. It does. And many times it takes many sessions to accept those aspects that we need to either change, transform, process, or let go. There's a lot of things in my body that with medicines right now, I don't even want to know why they're there. I've asked all the whys since I was 4. I'm done asking why. It just is. And the best thing sometimes is to release. To release and take a stand for what you're really feeling. What is the truth that you find within your body to be able to express how, who you relate to, in what terms you relate to. And especially in sexuality, and especially for women, since we've always been told, either you're married or, like a lot of the times, either you're married or you're a whore, or if you're single, or there's something wrong with you. A lot of people, especially in Latin countries, past 20-something years, and if you're not married, there's almost like some worthy part of you doesn't exist. So this medicine really takes you to look how you want to direct your sexuality in your life. And for me, because I always have that split between sexuality and spirituality, it's informing me that my sexuality has to have spirit and heart. And it doesn't matter if it's in a relationship, in a casual encounter, when those elements are present, it just is. It's also informing me, just by a sense of my body, of a yes or no in what I engage in. And that sense of power, I've never felt. And that sense of power is the power that I want to work when I work with women, or with that I want them to find whatever it is in them, whatever is in them, their truth, make them aware of what is holding them back from expressing her true sexuality. Regardless of the partnership, regardless of the parents, regardless of society, a lot of the times, regardless of men, and there's beautiful men here that are supportive of women, but it's women that decide how they want to have their sexuality. That is a little bit at the core of the work that I'm doing now. a lot of it is finding our own energy, our own flow, our own erotic aspects. Ayahuasca, it's an amazing teacher to find that. After all the dramas and going under the underworld and all those things, it does bring an aliveness to your body and a connection to everything. Very pure erotic energy. And later, a friend of mine is going to be talking about that erotic nature that ayahuasca brings. Well, there's other plants that bring many things to us too, like this African plant. And right now, yes.
Will you tell us the name of this plant that you're speaking of, the African plant?
It's called Voacanga.
Can you spell it?
Voacanga.
Thank you.
This plant has giving in terms of sexuality and for women and also for men. I mean, it does increase sexuality for men. Men have a very different way of reacting in their, not only in their sense of sexuality, but in their expression of sexuality. I'm just going to speak for women, especially my account, but also working with other women. It's a very empowering sense of sexuality. While ayahuasca opens to the erotic, this particular one, it brings you a clarity in your choices, a clarity in the space that you're in emotionally. It's almost like it helps you see and it helps you feel what to do with your sexuality. And it puts it in the body in such an amazing way. It not only opens up to the feminine organs of the body, but it's almost like you have a marriage of masculine and feminine energy in yourself. So it's a lot easier to be, I wouldn't say to be picky, but you know how it gets sometimes when we're so open or so desperate or so unresolved? Well, this one helps you feel very resolved and very empowered in how you want to direct your sexuality. There's another entheogen from India. And it's a, I would say it's the essence of the feminine energy. When you take that, it's almost like your whole body becomes that essence, feminine energy, and really brings a lot of healing in terms of helps people have amazing sex. And amazing sex is very spiritual. Amazing sex just gives us health, gives us a lot of joy, and a lot of liberation. So those are three of the medicines that I've been exploring sexuality. And I would like to hear if somebody else, or I would like to hear from people actually, what their experiences are on sex and entheogens. Thank you.
Another question, what was the name of the Indian medicine?
It's called white lily. Anybody would like to share their experiences? Come on.
I remember sex on acid when I was a hippie. Wow! I mean, like, wow, and I didn't even know anything either, right? It was a different experience, rather expanded, yeah. But I haven't had any current, modern, entheogenically oriented sexual experiences. But I think that it's important to differentiate between to recognize that sexual expression is only one feature of the erotic power.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And when I mention sexuality, as I say, it's energy, it's the erotic, it's also a sexual encounter, whatever. But it's that energy that we carry with no guilt and shame, and that is raw, present.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I relate with this old topic very deeply because I come from a Latin Catholic country, and so that sense of guilt and shame growing up as a child. And I personally have experienced the sense of clarity as well through another medicine in a ritual ceremonial work. And I just want to say that I thank you for your words and the topic you bring here, because even if it's a challenging thing to talk about, I know that there's in many levels, many of us can relate to that conflict. When we do spiritual work, how do we hold our sexuality? Because that energy sometimes comes into the middle of our spiritual work, especially when we do this work with other people, and all those projections and attraction happen to different realms, and so sometimes ambiguity can arise when we don't have that clarity.
Right.
And I am personally still confused in some levels on how, integrating that energy that it's so human into the experience of the sacred and the work that we do when we hold space for others.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I was saying, for me, my sexuality is it's always working in terms of integrating with spirituality. But let's say when I work with people, I just hold a container for them to just discover and find and go to all the places they need to go in order to find, to release, to whatever. And when you were saying you're confused about the energy, were you saying you're confused about your own energy and your expression of it, or when you are sitting in a circle?
What I mean is that the work with entheogens and with medicine helped me to realize that there was somehow a wound through which there was I would be not aware of how I project my energy out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so to hear you talking makes sense to me, because it's being reminded of how these plant teachers help us to see where our wounds are,
Yes.
and how we project or disperse somehow our energy without honing that.
Right.
So.
And one thing is holding the energy to be appropriate, and the other one is repressing the
Right.
energies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my country, as I say, I'm from Peru, and a lot of the times, sex is always in the theme of everything. But in terms of, the ayahuasqueros and all the sometimes, which I'm not going to go in depth because that's a whole other topic that I'm not. I've participated and had experiences, in a sense, like the people that can hold the space and keep their energy, and those who just transgress that. And people are there to heal. And when we hold space, it's for their healing, not for our agenda or our benefit of any kind. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
What I most commonly experience in entheogenic journey, whether it's the 5-MeO DMT that I work with or cannabis use, is for me what is represented in the Sri Yantra, which is sort of the opening of the cosmic womb. And my experience of that is that the entheogens have this co-creative relationship with us in opening our portals to ensoulment, and whether that's an ensoulment of another being that is coming through to be birthed, or whether it's reclaiming pieces of our own soul that have been split off or co-opted or whatever. There is a way in which that portal opens, and which to me feels often like the divine cosmos, or the divine cosmic emptiness
Yeah.
that is then sort of penetrated by the masculine energy
Yeah.
and bringing through then creation.
Yeah.
And from my background in Tantra, one of the things that we honor is that the rising of the Shakti, or the rising of the sexual, creative, is the goddess. It's
Right.
not a representative of the goddess, it
It's
is
the
the
energy
goddess
of it.
rising in us, male or female.
Yeah.
And that rises then to be connected to the cosmic, or the descending Shiva energy. And through that dance, then we create this ensoulment, and we become the vehicle
Yes.
through which creation happens. And so for me, it's a very embodied cosmology, I guess is the best way
Yes,
to put it,
yes.
in which I experience not just sexuality in the physical aspect, but sexuality as the vehicle through which creation happens.
And
That's
transcending
a common
and
theme for me in my
yeah, and connecting to God. Like
Pardon?
in connecting to God, the goddess,
Well,
if I
you
can
are-
connect with
you
you
are-
are it.
You are
as you
bringing
are,
it through,
yes.
through the channel of your body as the vehicle for that.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a similar experience with a combination of two entheogens. And just embodying that goddess energy is very healing for women, it's very healing for men as well. And just to be in that space of connection of you being with the gods. Yeah, thank you.
I've had similar experiences with mushrooms,
Mhm.
and I guess it was about a year ago I went to have an experience with someone, and he was a body worker, and he decided to touch me while we were using the mushrooms, and it was kind of a formalized setting, but I felt energy rushing through my body like I'd always known that this energy existed.
Mhm.
And I'd had prior entheogenic experiences when I was younger, but the energy just like moved through my body in a way. It just, all of a sudden, I felt younger, and it was like I stood up and I just started to dance the goddess. The goddess started to dance in me, and since then, this energy has continued to move through my body, whether or not I'm using mushrooms or not.
Mhm.
It opened something
Yeah.
that was just really, really powerful, and it's just incredible. A good, really great thing, you know. And the thing that that is really also interesting about it is it also opened a new channel for my creativity artistically, and the thing that's really interesting about it is how powerful it is to change a person's life, and it's this energy, this goddess energy. It can really shake things up. Once it's unleashed, you know, I mean, it can cause a lot of changes that aren't necessarily comfortable for everybody around us. You know, it can awaken and other people too.
Can
And
change relationships.
change
anything,
relationships, and it's interesting watching. Well, not interesting. It's astounding to watch how this energy continues to echo out in relationships with everybody that I've touched, you know, in some way. And it's a little bit of clarity. I could use a little bit of clarity that when you're talking about the clarity, because I'm kind of going wow, because of the social structure.
Mhm.
The social structure that basically makes it safe for people to have families and children and all of that kind of thing. There's some reasons that we have these social structures. And some of it can be broken down.
Right.
So I'm having this conflict about this kind of thing. But this goddess energy is like she knows what she's doing, and nothing is going to stop the goddess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she is present in every structure too,
Yeah.
as well. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, I have a daughter that is 12. I'm divorced, and marriage was never in my mind until I got married twice, but never fit in the marriage or that social structure. But what I've observed is similar to your experience. That goddess energy is almost like, for me, it's like the image that it really comes to me in my work is of the sacred prostitute. And that woman just danced and touched many people, or made love to some of the people and touched many people, and it was just a healing. I mean, she was a vessel for the goddess energy to heal the world. And in whatever expression of sexuality. And the structures need to change. So let's give him help for change. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.